The rain hammered the penthouse windows like 1,000 tiny accusations, each drop echoing the pulse in Aiden's temples as he stood frozen in the doorway. Wyatt's laughter, rich, careless, laced with that old money ease, cut through the murmur of the party, but it was the voice beside him that sliced deeper, a venomous whisper from some faceless suit in a tailored blazer. That one's just here for the view from the top floor, darling. Gold diggers got those small-town eyes that light up at the sight of a black card. Aiden's hand tightened on his whiskey glass until the ice cracked, the burn in his throat nothing compared to the fire igniting in his chest, because he knew they were talking about him, and for the first time in months, he wondered if they were right. He turned, the crowd parting like fog before a storm, and locked eyes with Wyatt across the room. Those warm hazel depths that had pulled him under like the Atlantic tides back home. But tonight, they flickered with something new, something like pity, and Aiden felt the floor tilt beneath him, the glittering harbor view of Seattle suddenly, as vast and unforgiving as the ocean that had swallowed his father's secrets years ago. Aiden Harper had never planned on falling for a man like Wyatt Kensington. Back in Haven Point, Maine, where the salt air clung to everything and the lobster boats rocked like forgotten dreams, love was simple. It was the way his dad, Elias, would hum old sea shanties while mending nets, or the quiet nod from Old Man Hargrove at the general store when Aiden helped unload crates without asking. At 28, Aiden was built like the cliffs that lined their coast, broad-shouldered, with calluses from years of hauling traps and a jaw set against the wind that carried too many ghosts. He had come west on a whim, chasing a freelance carpentry gig that promised enough to fix the sagging roof on the family cabin. But Seattle swallowed him whole, its steel spires and endless drizzle a far cry from the pine-scented mornings of home. Wyatt crashed into his life 6 months earlier, at a hole-in-the-wall bar in Capitol Hill where the craft beers flowed like confessions and the jukebox spun out Springsteen anthems. Aiden had been nursing a pint, sketching rough lines for a custom bookshelf on a napkin, when Wyatt slid onto the stool beside him, all sharp suits and sharper smiles, his fingers drumming the bar top in time with Thunder Road. "You look like you're building more than furniture," Wyatt had said, leaning in close enough that Aiden caught the scent of sandalwood and something faintly oceanic, like he'd just stepped off a yacht. "Like you're drafting an escape plan." Aiden had glanced up, expecting the usual pickup line from some tech bro high on his own stock options. But Wyatt's eyes held no games, just a quiet curiosity that made Aiden's pulse stutter. They talked until last call, Wyatt spinning tales of bootstrapping his fintech startup from a cramped dorm room at Stanford into a 9-figure empire, and Aiden sharing fragments of Haven Point, the way the fog rolled in like a lover's breath, hiding the jagged rocks below. By dawn, they were stumbling into Wyatt's loft overlooking Elliott Bay, hands fumbling with buttons and belts, the city's hum fading into the rhythm of their breaths mingling. It was messy, urgent, the kind of sex that felt like coming home after years adrift. Wyatt's body lean and taut under Aiden's palms, his whispers rough against Aiden's neck. "Stay. Just for breakfast." Breakfast turned into weekends, weekends into months. Wyatt's world was a whirlwind of velvet rope galas and boardroom battles, where deals closed over aged scotch and alliances shattered with a single tweet. Aiden fit awkwardly at first, his flannel shirts and work boots clashing against the sleek minimalism of Wyatt's life, but Wyatt made space for him, clearing a corner of his workshop for Aiden's tools, dragging him to hidden speakeasies where they could steal kisses without the flash of cameras. "You're my anchor," Wyatt murmured one night, tracing the scar on Aiden's jaw with his thumb, the one from a teenage wipeout on his dirt bike. "All this noise, and you make it quiet." But the whispers started early, insidious as the rain seeping through cracks. At Wyatt's company holiday mixer, a colleague named Trent, Wyatt's old college roommate, all ivy polish and veiled barbs, had clapped Aiden on the back too hard, his grin wolfish. "Lucky break, landing Kensington. Most guys would kill for a piece of that pie." Aiden forced a laugh, but it lodged in his throat like a hook, pulling at the doubts he'd buried deep. Who was he, really, in this equation? A carpenter from a dying town, scraping by on gigs while Wyatt's net worth ticked up like a stock ticker. His bank app showed a balance that barely covered rent back east. Wyatt's, well, Aiden had glimpsed it once by accident, numbers blurring into irrelevance. Nights grew heavier after that. Aiden would wake to Wyatt's phone buzzing with alerts from investors, the blue glow casting shadows that made his lover look like a stranger. "It's nothing," Wyatt would say, pulling Aiden close, their legs tangling under silk sheets that cost more than Aiden's truck. But it was something, The way Wyatt's assistant, Lena, eyed Aiden during brunches, her smiles tight as if measuring his worth in carats. Or the tabloid blurbs that popped up on Aiden's feed. Tech Titan's mystery man, from blue collar to boardroom. Friends from Haven Point texted memes, half joking. Don't forget us little people when you're yachting, Aid. Aiden pushed it down, buried it under the good moments. The lazy Sundays hiking Discovery Park, where Wyatt confessed his fear of the empire crumbling, his voice cracking like thin ice. I built this to prove I wasn't just some trust fund kid, but sometimes I wonder if it's all smoke. Aiden held him then, strong arms wrapping around Wyatt's frame, murmuring, "You're more than the numbers. You're the guy who remembers my coffee black, no sugar." In those pockets of vulnerability, Aiden saw the boy Wyatt had been, orphan young and clawing his way up, echoes of Aiden's own losses. His mother gone to cancer when he was 12, his father retreating into silence after, leaving Aiden to navigate the choppy waters of adolescence alone. Yet the gold digger label clung like damp wool. It peaked at a fundraiser for Seattle's LGBTQ Center, a glittering affair in a converted warehouse where rainbow flags draped from exposed beams and donors mingled with champagne flutes. Aiden wore his best button down, the one Wyatt had picked out, but he felt exposed, every glance a judgment. Trent was there, of course, circulating like a shark, and when he cornered them near the silent auction, his words dripped with false camaraderie. "Wyatt, you sly dog. Found yourself a real project, huh? What's the plan? Renovate the cabin boy into a CEO?" Wyatt stiffened, his hand finding Aiden's under the table, squeezing hard. "Watch it, Trent. Aiden's worth 10 of you on your best day." But the damage was done. Aiden excused himself to the balcony, the cool night air doing little to quench the blaze in his veins. He lit a cigarette, a habit he'd kicked years ago, resurrected in moments like this, and stared out at the fairy lights cutting through the dark water. Home felt a world away. The journal his father had left behind gathering dust in a box under his childhood bed, pages filled with Elias's scrawled confessions about a love lost to small-town scorn. Aiden had never read it fully, the weight too much, but now, exhaling smoke into the void, he wondered if history was carving the same cruel path. The fallout lingered like a bruise. Days blurred into tense silences, Wyatt overcompensating with grand gestures. A weekend in Napa, vineyards stretching golden under a relentless sun, where they made love in a sun-dappled suite overlooking the valley. "I don't care what they say," Wyatt growled against Aiden's skin, his hips grinding slow and deliberate, drawing out gasps that echoed off the stone walls. Aiden arched into it, fingers digging into Wyatt's back, chasing the oblivion where doubts dissolved. But even there, in the tangle of sheets scented with eucalyptus, the whispers followed. A sommelier at dinner mistaking Aiden for staff, her apology laced with pity. A group of Wyatt's investors at the next table, their laughter booming as one quipped, "Kensington's latest acquisition. Hope it's tax-deductible." Aiden started pulling away, not with words, but with the small erosions of routine. He took on extra jobs, late nights sanding oak panels in a rented garage, the rhythmic scrape of bomb against the chaos in his head. Wyatt noticed, of course, those perceptive eyes missing nothing, but his attempts to bridge the gap only widened the chasm. "Talk to me." He'd plead over takeout tie in the loft, chopsticks hovering forgotten. Aiden would shrug, force a smile. "Just tired. Long day." Lies built like driftwood dams, holding back the flood until one evening, after a particularly barbed email from Trent. "Careful, Wyatt. He's got that hungry look," Aiden snapped. They were in the kitchen, Wyatt chopping onions for pasta, the sizzle of garlic filling the air with false domesticity. "It's not about the money," Aiden said, voice low and edged like a blade. "It's them seeing me as some leech, sucking you dry because I can't stand on my own." Wyatt set down the knife, turning with that measured calm that had closed billion-dollar deals. "Then let me help. What's mine is yours." "No." The word cracked like thunder. Aiden's chest heaved, the scar on his jaw twitching with the tension. "That's the problem. I didn't sign up for your wallet, Wyatt. I signed up for you. The guy who quotes Whitman at 3 a.m. because he can't sleep. But every time I walk into a room with you, I'm the punchline. The gold digger from the sticks." Wyatt crossed the space in 2 strides, cupping Aiden's face, thumbs brushing away the dampness Aiden hadn't realized was there. "You're not. You're everything." Their kiss was desperate, salty with unshed tears, bodies pressing close until the counter dug into Aiden's spine. It led to the bedroom, clothes shed in a trail of urgency, Wyatt's mouth mapping every inch as if to imprint ownership, not of assets, but of the man beneath him. Aiden surrendered, legs wrapping around Wyatt's waist, their rhythm a frantic counterpoint to the storm outside, thunder rumbling like the doubts they couldn't outrun. But morning brought clarity, harsh as the light slanting through blinds. Aiden packed a duffel while Wyatt slept, leaving a note on the pillow, "Need space to breathe. Not goodbye. Love, Ed." He drove south on I-5, the Space Needle shrinking in the rearview, Seattle's sprawl giving way to the Cascade foothills. Haven Point called like a siren's song, the familiar curve of Route 1 pulling him east across the country, days bleeding into nights fueled by diner coffee and Springsteen on repeat. He thought of his father then, Elias Harper, who had died 2 winters back, felled by a heart attack while splitting wood. His last words a gruff, "Take care of the place, son," that Aiden still replayed like a looped reel. The cabin stood as he remembered, weathered clapboards sagging under ivy, the porch swing creaking in the wind off Penobscot Bay. Inside, dust motes danced in the slanted light, the air thick with the scent of pine and salt. Aiden unpacked in his old room, the walls papered with faded maps of the Gulf of Maine, and there, under the bed, was the box, cardboard edges frayed, labeled in his father's blocky script, "For Aiden, when you're ready." The journal inside was leather-bound, pages yellowed and warped from humidity, Elias's handwriting a sailor's scrawl, ink bleeding like old wounds. He cracked it open that first night, fire crackling in the hearth, a tumbler of bourbon warming his palm. The entries started innocuous, logs of hauls, weather notes, sketches of boat rigging. But midway through, the tone shifted, dated summer of '89, when Aiden was just a spark in his parents' eyes. "Met him today at the docks," Elias wrote. "Name's Harlan Cole, from over in Ridge Valley. Fisherman like me, but with eyes like storm clouds and a laugh that cuts through the fog. Helped me with the lines when the winch jammed. Didn't ask for a dime." Aiden's breath caught, the parallels slicing sharp. Harlan, his father's Harlan, a name whispered only in hushed family lore, the old friend who'd vanished after Elias's marriage to Aiden's mom. The pages unfolded like a hidden tide. Stolen afternoons in the boathouse, hands rough from ropes intertwining under the guise of repairs, nights anchored in hidden coves, the slap of waves masking their murmurs. "He sees me, not the nets or the debts," Elias confessed. "In a town that chews up men like us, he's the one soft thing I can't mend." But the small town had its teeth. Entries grew frantic. Rumors from the cannery, glares at the market, Harlan's brother cornering Elias with fists and slurs. "Poaching more than lobster. You queer bastard." Elias fought back, broke a knuckle on the man's jaw, but the damage festered. Harlan pulled away, letters going unanswered, until one gray dawn, he loaded his truck and left for Boston, chasing a welding job that promised anonymity. "Lost him to the whispers," Elias wrote, the ink smudged as if by tears. "They called me a fool for loving beyond the lines, but I'd trade every catch for one more tide with him." Aiden closed the journal, heart pounding, the fire's glow casting long shadows that danced like accusations. His own story mirrored it, the love deemed invalid by invisible ledgers, the fear of being the burden rather than the beloved. He thought of Wyatt, alone in that sterile loft, and the ache bloomed fresh. Dawn broke foggy over the bay, and Aiden laced up his boots, the journal tucked under his arm. The drive back west was a blur of highways and heartache, Springsteen crooning "My City of Ruins" as if scripted for the unraveling. Seattle greeted him with a downpour, the wipers slashing rhythmically as he pulled up to the loft. Wyatt answered the door in sweatpants and a faded Stanford tee, eyes red-rimmed, the stubble shadowing his jaw a testament to days unwashed. "Aiden," he breathed, the name a prayer and a plea, and then they were colliding, arms wrapping tight, the doors slamming shut behind them. No words at first, just the press of bodies, Wyatt's mouth hot and demanding on Aiden's, hands roaming as if to confirm he was real. They stumbled to the couch, shedding layers, Wyatt straddling Aiden's lap, their kisses deepening into something raw and reclaiming, hips grinding with the pent-up fury of separation. When they broke for air, Wyatt's forehead rested against Aiden's, breaths mingling. "I thought you'd gone for good. Trent's been stirring shit. Told the board you're a liability, some opportunist angling for a payout." Aiden's stomach twisted, but he pulled the journal from his bag, placing it in Wyatt's hands. "Read this. Then tell me if I'm the opportunist." Wyatt flipped through the pages by lamplight, his face paling with each revelation, the parallels etching lines of understanding across his brow. Your dad, he went through this? For loving someone society deemed wrong. Aiden nodded, throat tight. And Harlan? He left because the town made him feel like a thief stealing something that wasn't his. I almost did the same, Wyatt. Not because of you, but because they made me believe I was taking more than giving. The confession hung heavy, but Wyatt's grip tightened, not in anger, but in solidarity. You're not taking. You're the only one who's ever given me back the parts of myself I sold off for success. The quiet, the real. Screw Trent and his ilk. They talked until the rain eased, Aiden reading aloud Elias's final entry, a poem scrawled in the margins. Love's no ledger, no debt to tally. It's the tide that pulls you under, and you choose to dive. Wyatt traced the words with his finger, then Aiden's lips, sealing the vow with a kiss that tasted of salt and second chances. But truth, like the tide, has a way of surging back fierce. The next week brought the storm's full force, an anonymous leak to a tech blog, Trent's fingerprints all over it, Kensington's heartstrings. Is the tycoon's beau a blue-collar bandit? The piece dissected Aiden's background with surgical cruelty, Old Haven Point photos unearthed, his modest gigs framed as strategic positioning. Wyatt's stock dipped overnight, board members clamoring for distance, and in the eye of it, Trent cornered Wyatt in the elevator, smug as sin. Told you he'd drag you down. Cut him loose before the sharks circle. Wyatt fired him on the spot, security escorting Trent out amid sputtered protests, but the damage rippled. Invites dried up, partners hedged, and Wyatt's nights grew sleepless, pacing the loft like a caged wolf. Aiden felt the noose tightening, the journal's weight a constant companion, urging him to fight, not flee. We expose it, Aiden said one dawn, as they lay entwined, Wyatt's head on his chest. Not just the leak, the lie. Your way, with words that stick. Wyatt nodded, a spark igniting in those hazel depths. He drafted the post himself, raw and unfiltered, for his company's blog and X feed. A thread weaving their story, Aiden's voice woven in, the carpenter's hands that built more than shelves, the love that balanced empires. He shared snippets from the journal, anonymized but poignant. Elias's words a bridge across generations. They'll call it folly, but love's the truest fortune. No dramatics, just truth laid bare. Hashtag simple, love no ledger, real worth. The response crashed like a wave. Allies amplified, from queer activists in the Castro to old Stanford profs, decrying the toxicity of boardroom bigotry. Trent's career imploded, his own skeletons dragged into the light. Past settlements for harassment, whispers of his own closeted flings. But more than the backlash, it was the messages that moved them. A kid from rural Texas, echoing Aiden's youth. A widow in New Orleans, clutching her husband's letters, finally seen. In the quiet after, Wyatt proposed, not with rings or fanfare, but on the balcony where it had all frayed, the harbor lights twinkling like stars reclaimed. Marry me, not the myth. Build this with me, storms and all. Aiden's yes was a whisper against Wyatt's collarbone, their embrace a harbor against the world. They honeymooned in Maine, Haven Point's fog wrapping them like a blessing, the cabin's roof mended under Aiden's hands, Elias's journal enshrined on the mantel. Years later, with a daughter named after Harlan, strong-willed, with Wyatt's smile and Aiden's blue eyes, they'd return, teaching her to skip stones on the bay, whispering of tides that carry truths to shore. Love, they knew, wasn't a dig. It was the deepest vein, unearthing gold in the dark.